Hey there, welcome to ABC News Live. I'm Ariel Reshef at ABC News headquarters in New York. Let's get started on this very busy, very hot and humid Monday. First, your headlines. LeBron James taking his talents to L.A. He's joining the Lakers for that whopping $154 million contract. We're going to check in with our friends at ESPN in just a bit. And also that desperate search for those soccer players who were subsumed by floodwaters in Thailand. We have James Longman on the ground in Thailand as those rescue workers comb through some of that crazy devastation. We're going to check in with him in just a few minutes. But first to that breaking news out of Cleveland. A terror suspect arrested, accused of possibly plotting to attack a 4th of July celebration. ABC's Jack Date has been following the very latest. What do you know, Jack?
Ariel, the FBI announced the arrest of Demetrius Nathaniel Pitts on the charge of providing material support to al-Qaeda. According to court filings, Pitts first got the attention of the FBI in 2015 with social media postings about jihad. The FBI grew more concerned when the postings became more violent in nature. Eventually, the FBI used an undercover operative to gauge his intentions. With the 4th of July holiday approaching, Pitts' alleged plot came into clear focus. He was allegedly plotting to attack the Independence Day parade and fireworks in downtown Cleveland.
And Jack, we've heard about other plots foiled, possibly against 4th of July celebrations. How seriously is the FBI taking these threats?
They're taking the threats very seriously. The FBI can't afford to take any chances in these cases. We've seen a number of very simple attacks involving trucks or cars or simple weapons like knives and machetes. The threshold is quite low. It does not take much to create a lot of mayhem, and that's why they take these threats so seriously. Ariel?
All right, Jack. We also know, as you mentioned, there can be some crude mechanisms to carry out some of these attacks. What is the FBI doing, and what are they urging residents to do, people who are just going to these events? What should people be on the lookout for?
Well, I think right now they want people to be vigilant. If you see something, say something, contact your local police, contact the FBI. They want to hear from the public about anything that seems out of place. And again, we've seen a number of attacks and shootings and things of that nature in recent months coming from a variety of motivations. And, being vigilant is the key. So especially around the holiday season, around large gatherings, remain aware of your surroundings. Keep your eyes open, and I think those are the key points that law enforcement is continuing to stress during these times.
Yeah, sadly, a sign of the times that we have to be vigilant, but we also have to go out and enjoy our lives. Jack Date, thanks for following the very latest, and we know we'll check in with you in just a bit. Now to that exclusive interview with Michael Cohen, the president's former attorney, his quote-unquote pit bull who said he would take a bullet for President Trump, speaking exclusively with ABC's George Stephanopoulos for the first time since his hotel room and his home were raided. Let's take a listen.
I've spent hours with him over the last several months, 45 minutes in a Manhattan hotel room on Saturday. He's very much now his own man. I wanted to get into some of the specifics. Yeah. Starting out with one of the big questions I asked him is, what will you do if prosecutors come to you and offer you leniency in return for information on President Trump? Now, he said he wanted to respect the process, didn't get into specifics, but he added this, and he added this with emphasis. My wife, my daughter, and my son have my first loyalty and always will. I put family and country first. Nothing there about loyalty to President Trump. In fact, he didn't praise President Trump at all during that 45-minute interview. I followed up with him again. I said, but wait a second, Michael, you're facing the real prospect of having to choose between protecting your family and protecting President Trump. He says again, family is my first priority. Now, we should say here, again, Michael Cohen has not been charged with anything yet. He has not faced any charges, but he has hired a new attorney. And he did say, once he understands what charges might be filed against me, if any at all, I will defer to my counsel, Guy Petrillo, for guidance on future response. Now, this is important as well. Up until now, Michael Cohen has had different attorneys, and these are attorneys who've been part of a joint agreement with President Trump's attorneys. Once Guy Petrillo comes on board, that's expected to be at the end of this week, that joint agreement with President Trump's attorneys is going to end. That is a significant move. I said, there's a good chance that President Trump and his team are going to come after you. They're going to come after you hard. And this is where he also stiffened his spine. He actually visibly straightened up in his seat and then said this: I will not be a punching bag as part of anyone's defense strategy. I am not a villain in any story and won't allow others to try and depict me in that way. The president and his allies have compared the FBI raid to, his allies at least, have compared it to stormtroopers. The president called it a witch hunt. Very, very different message from Michael Cohen. He said, I don't agree with those who demonize or vilify the FBI. I respect the FBI as an institution as well as their agency. He said, in fact, when the FBI came to his hotel suite, they were very courteous, they were very professional. In fact, he said when they left, he shook their hands.
And we're joined now by ABC's Karen Travers to shed a little bit of context, some light on this. Karen, it sounds like a bit of a change of tune from Michael Cohen saying he will indeed cooperate with Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, maybe veering a little bit away from that loyalty to the president. Is the White House responding yet to this?
Not a single statement yet from the White House. I talked to a White House official a few moments ago, Ariel, and they said they're not going to be commenting on this. And I asked if they were surprised there wasn't a tweet from President Trump this morning, because really he tends to jump on headlines, especially ones that involve the Russia investigation. But interestingly, we did not hear from the president in a tweet. Sarah Sanders does brief this afternoon, her first on-camera briefing in a week. She will certainly get asked about this. But Ariel, this is Michael Cohen, a fiercely loyal pit bull attack dog for President Trump over many years. Michael Cohen, who just a few months ago had indicated in an interview that he would take a bullet for President Trump. President Trump also had said in a tweet that he didn't think Michael Cohen would flip on him. He wrote, "Most people will flip if the government lets them out of trouble. Sorry, I don't see Michael doing that despite the horrible witch hunt and the dishonest media." So certainly this could be a very interesting change of tune from Michael Cohen and a new chapter in this ongoing investigation.
It will be very interesting. Remains to be seen what will happen on that, and also whether we will hear Sarah Sanders address this later on in that briefing. But one thing we know the White House is focusing on is replacing Justice Kennedy on the U.S. Supreme Court. Are we any closer to knowing the very short list of those candidates for the job, and when might we actually have a decision?
July 9th is when the president will make his announcement. He can make the decision before that, but he is certainly teasing this in the way that he likes to do as a former reality television show producer. Remember last year when he unveiled Justice Neil Gorsuch as his pick to fill that vacant Supreme Court seat? He did it in prime time. There was a lot of maneuvering of maybe bringing other candidates to Washington and head fakes by the White House, and ultimately nobody knew who it was going to be until they walked into the room that night. I wouldn't be surprised if the president tries to drum up a lot of suspense with this nominee, but it's also not surprising that he's going to move very quickly to make his decision. He's working off of an original list of 25 names, Ariel. It's the list he got during the 2016 campaign. He told reporters on Friday on Air Force One he's whittled that down to 5. It includes 2 women. He didn't say who, but signaled he would start interviewing those potential candidates in the coming days. So once the president makes that pick, there's going to be a flurry of activity around this. And the president himself predicted over the weekend that it is going to be a vicious confirmation battle. And Ariel, he pointed to Democrats. He said they're going to obstruct, they're going to resist no matter who he nominates. He might also have to make a very serious sales pitch to some Republicans. Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, very key potential vote, told ABC's Martha Raddatz over the weekend that she can't support some of the names that are on that president's list right now, and that if there is a nominee that indicates they would roll back, overturn Roe v. Wade, that would not be acceptable to her.
Karen Travers, July 9th, rapidly approaching. We'll check in with you for the very latest. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
One of France's most wanted fugitives on the run now after that daring jailbreak over the weekend. I'm not sure if you saw the video. We're going to show it to you, though. He escaped by helicopter, and ABC's Eva Pilgrim is on the ground following the manhunt.
Ariel, this is a crazy story, a prison breakout that seems like something out of a movie, but this was actually real life. A well-known French gangster, 46-year-old Redouane Faïd, broke out of this prison using a helicopter. The whole thing is a little crazy. So basically what happened was 3 commandos hijacked this helicopter. They take the pilot, they force him to fly here, and they hover over this area right here where the yellow building and the red building are. It's a very small area to put a chopper. 2 of the commandos go in to get Faïd. A third stays with the pilot to make sure he stays. Faïd's actually meeting with his brother at that time. His brother right now is being questioned by police. He's being detained as those questions are coming. But as this is all happening, Faïd runs out with the commandos. They put him back in the chopper. The prisoners are cheering. Spectacular escape, and the chopper flies away. It ends up going about 30 minutes north of Paris where it lands. They let the pilot go. They light the chopper on fire, they get in a car, and they drive off. The last we have seen of them, they switched cars and they were going north. So at this point, we don't know exactly where they are. You can see people screaming. We don't know exactly where they are, but they were driving north. So there's a lot of questions. Officials think that this was pretty well planned out. Prison guards are saying they saw drones flying in this area a few months before. And I just kind of want to show you the makeup of the prison. You can see the netting. So this area that they actually hovered the helicopter is the only area in the entire prison that's not covered by that netting. And the reason for that is because they don't actually use that area where he put the chopper, because that area is only used, ironically, when the prisoners are being released on their way out. So there aren't usually prisoners in that area. The other issue that they had here, you'll notice the prison guards, the shacks, they have these towers built, right? There's not one with a clear shot to where the chopper was. So there was no way for them to shoot the chopper down. So the chopper was able to leave. Now, this isn't the first time that Fayed has actually broken out of jail. In 2013, he also broke out of jail using explosives. He was gone for 6 weeks that time, and he's pretty well known in France. Just to give you some background on him, he was serving a 25-year sentence for murder for a botched robbery that ended in the death of a female police officer. It was thought that he was likely the mastermind behind all of that plan and behind that plot, and that's why he was in prison. Now, at one point, he said he was going to change his ways and he was going to become a better man. And he wrote a book and he went on a book tour. And he actually talked about the fact that he watched these action movies. He was really into Robert De Niro and that movie Heat. And he would watch the scenes over and over and over again to memorize the plots and the plans, to try to recreate them in real life. And a lot of comparisons have been made between this plot and plan and thoughts of some movies where similar types of breakouts have happened. At this point, there's about 3,000 police officers that are searching for him. They are hopeful that they will be able to find him, but at this point, no word on where he can be. We, of course, will continue to follow this story. Ariel?
We know you will. Eva Pilgrim, thank you so much. There from France, highly motivated and highly calculated escape there. Now we want to turn to Thailand, where the desperate search is still on for those 12 soccer players who were inundated by floodwaters on a mountain. ABC's James Longman has been following this search effort, and now James joins us live. And James, thank you so much for being with us. We know it's getting late there. What are the latest developments, maybe even a tiny slice of hope?
That's right, Ariel. I think the first thing to say is that the word cave probably does this situation a disservice. It is a massive underground network of tunnels and passageways. It runs for miles inside. And these kids, it's hoped, and their soccer player, are something like 2 kilometers inside this cave network. And we've been speaking to divers here, actually at one of the places they've been resting as they go and work in shifts all night, 24 hours a day, in and out of that cave, who told us that they have made it now to a T-junction inside that cave system, and on the walls there they've seen a bit of writing. Now they can't be sure that it's definitely these kids, but some of it, according to the diver we spoke to, looked fresh. So that has given them a little bit of hope that at least they're on the right way. It's thought that these soccer players and their coach would do this kind of initiation where they would run into the cave and see how far they could get, and the kid who got the furthest would write his name on the wall and run back. And because it's so far and so deep inside, they didn't really have any idea that the rain had come, and when the rain comes here, it comes quick. And so it meant that they got stuck inside. So at the moment, there's kind of a system of about 3 or 4 cave areas which they've managed to clear. They're using them as kind of staging areas, so think climbing Mount Everest. You have staging posts along the climb. Well, it's the same sort of idea here. They've made their way something like 800, well over 800 meters, I should say, into the cave, but they think there could be about 400 or 500 meters to go before they make it to this dry part of the cavern, which is where they're really hoping, where this whole country actually is hoping, that those kids and their soccer player and their soccer coach are waiting for them.
James, what are authorities telling you about how long those 12 soccer players and their coach may be able to survive if they are encapsulated in one of those caves?
Well, the good news, if there is any good news on this whole thing, is that these are kids we're talking about. They're 11 to 16, and they're their soccer coach is 25, so they're young, and so they can survive in this sort of environment. The two things that you need are oxygen and water, and it seems that they may have those things. There are cracks in the rock, and there could be running water, mineral water essentially, that's coming down through the rock. So as long as they've got that they can drink, and they're not been drinking kind of stagnant, stayed water that can give you things like typhoid and other kind of waterborne diseases, then it could be that they could survive in this kind of muddy patch that people are hoping that they're in for weeks, even if they have those sort of scraps of food that they might have had when they went in. So that is the hope, at least. And like I said, they're quite young, so the idea is that they could survive something like this. We have just, like I said, been speaking to people here, and the plan is if they get to that dry area, that obviously this is a 2-kilometer stretch back to getting out of the cave. So some Thai divers have actually volunteered, doctors who have been in the dive party, to stay, if they get to that dry area, with the kind of nutrition and food and rations and things that they might need, with that group for months, to wait for the rain to pass, because we're waiting now. As time is really against them, because they've got a couple of days until more wet weather is scheduled. We're going into the wet season now in Thailand. So if that happens, if they get to them, then the idea is to get them out. But if they haven't got time to do that, rescuers could be staying in that cave with those boys for months until the wet weather passes.
Quite a team effort that's underway there, James, and you're watching all of it unfold in front of you. I know you've been talking to some family members, friends of these soccer players and their coach. Is hope waning, or are they still holding out hope that this may end in a happy story here?
This has gripped Thailand. This really has brought, in many ways brought the country together. I've been seeing on social media, it plays a big part in these sorts of stories, and especially here in Thailand. People are really, really optimistic about finding these boys alive. Look, some of the professional divers, they give caution. They say, look, we've really got to go with the proof that we've got in front of us. But Thai people have really rallied behind this effort. Being up at the camp, which I was earlier, I think you've got some footage of us walking around there. It is a mess in the sense that it is really muddy and quite a difficult place to negotiate. This is a very rural part of Thailand, up in the jungle. We're on the border with Myanmar here, really, really out in the middle of nowhere. But people have really rallied. You've got volunteers from all over the country. They've come up to give food, to give medicine, to give anything they really can. Big volunteering groups have arrived here to try to help. So, yeah, I think obviously there's a real concern and sadness. The families have been waiting just at the entrance to the cave for news. They've been watching all the media, play out around this. These are young kids. Obviously, there's concern for them. But Thailand is waiting, I should say, with bated breath for these next couple of days to see if the teams can get into this dry part of the cave and find those boys.
Obviously, our hopes and prayers with the families and hoping this turns out for the better. James Longman there in Thailand, thank you so much for joining us. And as James was mentioning, the heavy rains, the heat, a factor for those rescue workers in Thailand. But we're also dealing with extreme heat here in the United States. ABC's chief meteorologist Ginger Z has what you can expect ahead of the holiday.
Ariel, thank you, and we are all melting. I saw some of your Insta stories saying you were like it was the surface of the sun. Well, that's not going anywhere. Let's go ahead and talk about what's happening in the weather headlines. And we have to include the heat because you put a thermal gun on the surface, and it is 130 degrees. Not quite surface of the sun, but plenty hot. Don't want to put any pet's paws or certainly not your hands or feet on that. And then look at this, the dangerous heat staying with us. The heat advisories that are stretching from Virginia to Maine. There are excessive heat warnings, pockets of those throughout. It's because we're not dropping overnight very low, and then we're also staying in this long, prolonged, dangerous heat all the way through the end of the week for most folks. This afternoon, it'll feel like 106 in Richmond, Virginia. It'll feel like 94 in Hartford, Connecticut. And then watch the jet stream there, the arrows that are depicted. That's actually going to bubble even higher for parts of the Midwest, again, bringing that ridge in, the high pressure, and that means extra heat. So 102, that feels like in Memphis by Wednesday afternoon. And the feels like on the East Coast, look at Washington, D.C. staying above 90. A lot of folks are going to see 7 days in a row of this. If New York City does it, Ariel, we're going to see 7 days in a row. That's a 1 in 33 year event.
I feel like the Wicked Witch in and the Wizard of Oz. I'm melting. Oh my goodness, it is so hot out there. Stay hydrated, everyone. Want to head out to Seattle. We have our friends at ESPN standing by. They were going to talk to us about the Special Olympics, but of course, this is the big elephant in the room. LeBron James taking his talents to LA. He's moving to the Lakers, and this is a headlining story. The whole world is buzzing about it. ESPN's Jen Latta joining us now from a balmy Seattle. I first have to mention, Jen, we're a little jealous. I hear it's only 55 degrees there. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, all this talk of melting all over the country, and I'm just sitting here shivering, but it's okay. It's great. We're at Special Olympics, and it's wonderful. You mentioned LeBron James. If you think the celebration in LA because LeBron is headed there was big, just think of what it is in some of those other Eastern Conference cities like Boston and Philadelphia, who now don't have to go through LeBron James in order to make their way to the NBA Finals. 8 straight years where LeBron has been in the finals, and now as he takes his talents to LA, he'll have to get through the Golden State Warriors in order to get there as well. So it is a huge story. We, of course, were at the Special Olympics Unified Challenge yesterday, very immersed in that event and with those athletes. And yet when the news broke about LeBron, it trickled very quickly through all of the crowd and through all of the athletes. Obviously, huge sports fans there, and everybody was talking about what an impact it would have on the NBA landscape.
I'm hoping that it's a positive impact for my Oklahoma City Thunder, but we'll leave that for another time, all that analysis. Let's get to what you're actually there to cover. The Special Olympics, the 50th anniversary of this amazing event. Tell us what we can expect today.
Well, it all started yesterday with the opening ceremonies right here on the University of Washington campus. More than 40,000 people filled the stadium to welcome about 4,000 athletes from all over the country. And I have to tell you, I've been covering sports for nearly 2 decades. This is one of the most inspirational events that you can possibly participate in. The earnestness of these athletes, the competitiveness of them, a celebration of inclusion and diversity, and unmitigated joy. You see so many people out here who work their butts off all year long to get to this stage of competition. And then once they're here, the camaraderie is such a huge theme. It's an incredible event, and we're so lucky to be a part of it. You know, choose to include is the theme of the Special Olympics and of this event. And when you talk to these athletes, that's exactly what they want. They don't want to be seen as different. They don't want to be ostracized. They appreciate Special Olympics because it has created a place for them to belong, to be one of many, and it is just one of the best events that you could possibly take part in. We will be here all week long bringing you coverage from ESPN on ESPN2 every single night, content from the games, some of the best features of the games, highlighting some of these spectacular athletes. It truly is an incredible experience.
Well, we know those athletes are competing at the very peak of their sports, their individual sports, and we wish them the best of luck, and we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us on ABC News Live. Take care, Jen. Now we want to talk about that other sports news, the heat wave gripping the UK as Wimbledon gets underway. ABC's Molly Hunter is here to break it down for us. And Molly, unprecedented security ahead of this matchup.
Hey, Ariel, that's right. Unprecedented security, but also unprecedented heat. I've just been hearing the Ginger and every report about how hot it is there. It's 83 degrees here, which is pretty darn hot for Brits. I would say that most Brits out there are melting as well. But on to security. This is the kind of thing that we're seeing. I'm just going to have Andy go down to show you this. The ring of steel around Wimbledon. To prevent vehicular attacks, I'm just going to have Andy walk towards the main gate now. So we see those kind of bollards all over. Where people are actually queuing to get their tickets, Ariel, there's a massive metal cage. And here you see once they've queued, they get in there, their bags are being checked on those tables. Anything remotely suspicious, obviously taken out, security at an all-time high. In there, though, is center court, Ariel. This is such excitement. It's day one. The strawberries are ripe. The champagne is chilled. 40,000 people are in there. We did see Roger Federer breeze through earlier today, but of course the match we're excited for today is Serena Williams, and she is going for it. She's getting on the court right about now.
I hope you're saving us some of those strawberries and champagne, Molly. I expect a package in the mail sometime soon. We know Roger Federer vying for his 9th Wimbledon title. And of course, everybody's talking about Serena Williams and her comeback after having her baby Olympia. But she's also making headlines for talking about her decision to stop breastfeeding. We have a little clip we want to play you, and then we'll talk to Molly.
I was training and everything, and everyone says, oh, you're so thin when you breastfeed. I'm going to be totally frank. You're so thin. Is it? That's a lot. Isn't it? Thank you.
Thank you for calling that out. As a mom of a 3-year-old, I know this all too well. Sometimes you don't get thinner after you breastfeed. Molly, this commentary from Serena Williams, this candor from her, is really making waves all over social media. A lot of moms talking about it.
That's right. Everyone is responding, actually, Ariel, to one of your tweets and your stories this morning. And Serena Williams has talked about this a lot since her baby came into being. Of course, she's advocated for breastfeeding, but she had just stopped breastfeeding. And one of the things that was so courageous, I think, about the way she spoke about it in that press conference is that it's a very personal decision. Every woman is different. Here's a superstar athlete who has trainers on hand, who has physios on hand, who takes care of her body, and yet actually breastfeeding, which of course we heard from Dr. Jen Ashton, is the most medically smart way for many women to go, wasn't a good plan for her. So I loved how courageous and how honest she was, that actually for her body and for her family, it wasn't the best way to go. Dr. Jen Ashton, though, did talk about this morning how that for every mom and every family, they really do have to think about what's best for them. The operative word is feeding, and her advice, Ariel, this morning, which I thought was just so good, is that feed your baby in whatever way works best for you and your family. And I loved that honesty. But she's getting on the court. We're cheering on that new mom. It's very exciting.
It surely is very exciting. I loved that she opened up about this and that she talked about having a vegan diet. And she also talked very candidly about how her coach told her to stop breastfeeding because it just wasn't good for her career. It's really a tough decision so many moms grapple with. And Molly, thank you so much for grappling with the heat. Bring us some champagne. Thanks from Wimbledon. Thank you for watching ABC News Live. Thanks to our correspondents around the world for joining us. You have the very latest on abcnews.com. And of course, download the ABC News app. World News Tonight with David Muir. Have a great Monday. Stay cool.